Why having a high basketball IQ isn't enough. I'm Tony, welcome back to Streetball Strategy.
Show me, you wanna run where you keep the pace. Just show me, you good now, but you wanna be great. Show me, ain't nothing left that I came to say.
This topic comes up because of what I witnessed in the NBA Finals, the NBA playoffs this 2024 season. Most specifically when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks. There was a lot of talk about how Luka Dončić and Kyrie Irving are high IQ offensive basketball players. But yet they pretty much got destroyed in the NBA Finals against the Boston Celtics. So I'm going to use the example today of how even though Luka and Kyrie are very high IQ players, why they pretty much got dominated in the NBA Finals. And then we're going to talk about how we can then relate that to us out here at the park. So the example I want to use to illustrate how basketball emotional intelligence is at least as important, if not more so, than mental basketball intelligence comes from how the Dallas Mavericks got dominated in the NBA Finals by the Boston Celtics. Because to me, the difference between the two teams is that this Boston team, this Boston unit, this roster had been to the NBA Finals before and lost. The losing part is the key. Boston could have said to themselves when they lost in the finals that it's never guaranteed that you're going to get back there. So they got there, they lost, and then they could have folded and given up emotionally. But instead, they matured, they rallied, and they were able to get back to the finals because they emotionally matured. And while the Dallas Mavericks played very well in the Western Conference playoffs, once they met Boston in the finals, they pretty much got dominated. And to me, even if the teams were completely even in terms of basketball players, their actual rosters, even if they were equal, the fact that Boston had been there before to the finals, lost, and then emotionally rallied to come back, they would always have the edge against this Dallas team. Because while Luka Dončić has been to the Western Conference Finals, while he's played European Championship basketball before, he's never been on this stage. He's never been to the NBA Finals, let alone been there and lost. And then when it comes to Kyrie Irving, the weird thing is it's actually kind of counterproductive that Kyrie's been to the finals before and won and been a huge contributing factor as to how and why they won. Him winning alongside one of the greatest players in NBA history, and then Kyrie hitting this huge shot in the NBA finals leading to them winning the championship. That's actually kind of counterproductive when it came to this particular finals series. Because Kyrie's been there before, yes, and he has the experience, yes, but he's only ever won. He doesn't know what it's like to lose and then to have to emotionally mature and rally to get back to the finals. So while Luka and Kyrie are very high IQ players and they were able to use their mental basketball intelligence to make their way through the Western Conference playoffs and be very successful doing so, once they came across a Boston Celtics team who had that emotional maturity from having lost and rallied to get back to the finals, it was never a question as to, is Dallas going to win against Boston, who is, rallied emotionally, got back there, and are just emotionally more intelligent than the Dallas Mavericks. Like I said, even if the two teams were completely even when it came to basketball players and roster, the fact that Boston had forced themselves to be more emotionally intelligent and mature, they were always going to win that matchup. It was just a bad matchup for Dallas. So even if you make the case that both Kyrie and are more basketball mentally intelligent than the Boston Celtics, even if that were the case, to me, that's how much more important emotional basketball intelligence and maturity is than basketball mental intelligence. Because no matter how much you understand the game, how smart you are about the game, if you don't have the emotional intelligence, integrity, maturity to support that mental intelligence, you're only going to go so far against a team that is more emotionally mature than you are. I came up with a theory a long time ago. One of the strongest beliefs I have as a person and as a basketball player is the way that human behavior works, the way you do the things you do, whether it be as a basketball player or a person, and this is universal, it applies to every person ever born ever, and every action that they have ever taken. My theory is their behavior process goes like this. You feel something, you have some kind of an emotion, directly from that emotion, then you form a certain thought or set of thoughts, and then from those thoughts, that's when your actions come directly from. That's how your behavior is formed. It's a direct path. It goes feelings, emotions, then thoughts, then actions, which are your behaviors. That goes for all of your human behavior, and of course that goes for basketball behavior and actions as well. And because emotions are the foundations of it all, and because your intelligence then sits on top of those emotions, that's why it doesn't matter how strong this is, how strong your intelligence is, if this is not right, this will only get you so far. And because Boston was more emotionally intelligent, emotionally matured than Dallas, Dallas was never going to beat Boston in this NBA final. So now let's talk about how we can use emotional intelligence to bolster our mental intelligence on the basketball court out here at the park. For the sake of the topic of this video, when I'm talking about emotional intelligence, what I'm talking about is staying motivated and staying inspired out here throughout the remainder of your basketball career. Because when we talk about the 3 levels of basketball hierarchy out here, we refer to as like beginner or novice, intermediate, and then advanced or elite. And in relation to those 3, what I'm talking about is not in comparison to other players out here. We're only talking about you and your potential as a basketball player. So we're talking about like, okay, are you a novice in terms of your potential? Are you intermediate or are you advanced? We're not comparing ourselves in this example to anyone else. We're only comparing ourselves to where we are in our potential as a basketball player. And you would think that, for example, if you're a beginner, that would mean like, okay, you're maybe around 20-25% of your possible potential as a basketball player. And then when you're intermediate, now you're like 50% of where you could possibly be as a basketball player. And then like advanced would be, I don't know, 80 or 85% of your potential as a basketball player. But that's not how I see it. To me, when it comes to your potential as a basketball player, you're not intermediate until you've reached about 80 or 85% of your possible potential as a basketball player. So how does this make sense? If you're 80 or 85% of your possible potential as a basketball player, you would think that you are now an advanced player at the very least. But you're probably thinking about it in the wrong way. It's not linear. It's not like when you're a beginner, you're down here at 0, and then you just linearly progress until you're at 100%. That's not the way it works. In terms of quantity of basketball players, it's a curve graph. So at the beginning, there's very few players who are starting their basketball journey at the same time as you are. So when players start to learn basketball, when they start playing basketball, a lot of players just immediately stop because maybe basketball just doesn't fit them. It's not as fun as they thought it was going to be. It just doesn't fit their personality, so they immediately stop trying to learn and play basketball. But for those of us who go on and continue to learn and to play, that's a relatively small number. There's relatively few players who begin their basketball journey at the same time that you do and continue to progress. So on this side of the spectrum, there's very few players. As you advance and get to intermediate, now that's where most of the players are. And then when it comes to being an advanced player, then the curve goes back down again. There's very few players who are advanced and or elite. The reason there are so many players in that intermediate stage is because learning anything new, getting better at anything new, such as basketball, what makes it fun and thus what gets people to stick around and get to that intermediate stage is the fact that you are constantly making progress. You're constantly getting better. While you're doing it, it doesn't really it never goes like as quickly. You never get as good as quickly as you would like. But the reality is, yes, you are making constant progress as a beginner. And because you're making progress, because you're getting better on a consistent basis, that's what makes it fun. The progress, the fact that you see yourself, you experience yourself constantly getting better, that's fun. And so those players stick around until they become intermediate. One of the best ways to know that you've arrived as an intermediate player is that progress is going to slow the closer you get to becoming intermediate. The rate of how much better you get at basketball, that's going to slow down precipitously the more intermediate you become. When that rate of progression slows down, the natural thing to do as a basketball player is to start trying to brainstorm as to, okay, I've been doing X, Y, and Z, practicing, training, studying, whatever, that has led me to becoming an intermediate player, that has given me the skills and abilities that I now have, but that same training, practice, studying, everything I've done, as now the results of that are now starting to slow down. I'm not getting the same results as I used to. The reason for that is because you are now 80 to 85% of potential basketball player you're ever going to be. When that happens, that is when many basketball players either give up and stop trying and they stop playing basketball, or if they do continue to play, they just sort of settle for being that player. They settle for being 80 to 85% of the basketball player they will ever be. It takes a lot more effort, a lot more time, a lot more repetition, a lot more studying, a lot more trying, a lot more effort than it took for when you were a beginner, and doing so means there's a lot less fun than there used to be because now you're not making the progress you used to make. That's where the emotional intelligence comes into play. Can you stay emotionally engaged in your goal of becoming the best basketball player you can be? Which means, can you figure out how to keep yourself motivated, keep yourself inspired to be that very best basketball player that you can be, to get well into that 90% of your possible potential as a basketball player. Most people give up. That's why there's very few players who are advanced or elite. It's too hard to make that progress. It takes too long. It's too much effort. So they just settle for being an intermediate player. Going beyond intermediate is a matter of emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, and the majority of that means, can you stay motivated? Can you stay inspired to push yourself beyond being that intermediate player when everybody else stays there? Because as an intermediate player, you have a pretty good idea of what you need to do to continue to advance. You just emotionally don't want to because it's going to take too long and because it's too difficult. What's going to make the difference, what's going to separate you from all the other intermediate players is, can you stay motivated? Can you stay inspired so that you continue to work when they settle for who they are? That's how and why emotional basketball maturity and intelligence is more important than mental basketball intelligence. Sure, any player can reach the intermediate level of basketball. The question is, can you be the exception that goes beyond that and becomes elite or advanced? And the way to go beyond that is to be the few players that actually stay emotionally motivated and inspired to get better than everybody who settles for being intermediate. And a side note of how to do that, one of the things that as you mature, as your game matures, as you get more towards that advanced stage of your career, one of the things that you may very well need to do in order to stay motivated, to stay inspired, is to take a break. Because as an intermediate player, in terms of volume, quantity, how much work you're putting into basketball, it never gets more, it never gets higher than in your intermediate stage. That being the case, it's very possible, probable, that you're going to get burnt out on basketball from time to time. That's natural. It happens to everybody, especially everybody who's trying to push as far as we try to push. So therefore, from time to time, you may need to take a week here, a week there, maybe 2 weeks to step away from the game in order to allow yourself to stay motivated and inspired. If you feel yourself getting worn down, getting fatigued, getting burnt out on basketball, where like this stops being fun the way it's supposed to be and it starts to feel more like work and you feel like you don't really want to do it anymore, maybe you need to take a break. Maybe you need to walk away for a week or two here or there in order to reinvigorate yourself, in order to allow yourself to miss the game, to miss the work, to miss the hustle and the grind of it all. And then when that happens, you can come back and you'll pretty much pick up from where you left off. You don't have to be worried about like losing your game because you took a week off here or there. Even if you regress a little bit, the fact that you've been doing this for years and you've kind of structured your life and your lifestyle around trying to become the basketball player you can be, taking a week off here or there is not going to hurt you as much as you may be fearing it will. You may regress a little bit, but it'll all come back very quickly, and then as long as you're reinvigorated, as long as you're motivated and inspired again, not only will that all come back to you very quickly, you can then very well make more progress more quickly than if you would have continued to sort of grind and run yourself into the ground and get more and more burnt out. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, if you think it's going to help you not only get to being an intermediate player, but then go beyond that by staying emotionally intelligent and mature, then please subscribe to the channel. Also, let us know down in the comments, what do you do to stay motivated and inspired to reach your potential as a basketball player when most people around you will, if not already, have fallen off and given up or settled for the basketball players they are? How do you stay inspired and motivated to be the best basketball player you can be? Let us know down in the comments. But before you comment, make sure you hit that thanks button down below, because not only does that thanks button make all of your comments stand out because they get all highlighted, it also directly supports the channel when you hit that button. So for anyone that does hit that thanks button, know I genuinely appreciate it. As always, like, share, comment, like I said, make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, I'll see you guys next week.
I do not care what you came to say. I did not come to play no games. I am the one and only, coming for all the trophies. You better